How you doing, Glenn? Hood Rubino, Devil's Digest. Asking the obvious question about the quarterback situation. Maybe from the outside looking in, it looks like a dilemma for the coaching staff after the way Trenton played against Washington. But Sean Aguano came out and said a quarterback or any starter really should not lose the position due to injury. How hard has it been you as offensive coordinator to reconcile this quarterback situation?
I don't think it's a reconcile situation at all. I mean, we're going to coach as hard as we can, whoever's out there, and the expectation is when you're out there, you got to perform and perform at a high level. So, obviously excited about what Trenton did. The expectation is for, again, whoever's out there to do what we're asking them to do. So, I think we've had a good week of practice. The room's been great, and we're looking forward to continuing, success moving forward.
Hey, Glenn. Chris Carmen, Sentinel Source. What's your comfort level like with understanding your personnel at this point? Because obviously there's a process of kind of coming to an awareness about what everybody's best at. So
yeah, I think that's a great question and a very a valid question. I think it's something that has evolved. I think in the last few weeks, I think we're creating more of a comfort level with that and continuing to build to their strengths. We do the best you can, particularly new system, new thought process, new to some of the personnel, particularly with our turnover on offense. You think you have a decent feel kind of going into the season, but actually when the lights come on and really what you see and what's happening, then there's some evolution even after that. So I think in the last couple of weeks I've been pleased with guys becoming more comfortable with the system, and then us, as far as a game planning standpoint, trying to get the people in the right position to make those plays. Michael, then Michelle.
Coach Michael Caratino, Sideline Sports. To piggyback off that, too, obviously, a little bit shifting around with guys being out on the offensive line, but, up now, coming into Stanford, just your thoughts of the overall growth. And I know we always touched on the depth of the offensive line, but just the growth of the offensive line in general.
Yeah, it's been good. Obviously, we talked about the pass protection piece here recently, which, we think we're trending in the right direction. We're pushing that depth, obviously, to the limits with some of the injuries up there. So, thankfully that has been the situation, and same with all positions. As the next person that has to step up, they've got to meet that expectation and play at a high level. So, really proud of those guys, and there'll be some new faces, new positions, even moving forward. So, we got to continue to get it done for sure.
Michelle, then Noah.
Well, Michael stole my thunder there. Can you kind of go with us as far as what positions and who's going to be at each position? I mean, we can tell kind of what we see at practice, but who's going to be, especially the replacement for Ladarius?
Yeah, so it'll be Chris Martinez, and then Daz will come down. So that'll be the transition, and then Emmett's playing well, so he'll continue to be a right tackle. So.
Okay, let's ask about Elijah Badger. He looked really good today. What have you seen from him from a progression? Because he seems to kind of finally be breaking out like we all were hoping he would last year.
Right, yeah. And again, I think it's that confidence level as the season goes. He creates some plays, when it really counts, when the lights are on, and that confidence continues to build. We're continuing to try to find ways to get him involved in the game plan, and I think he sees that, he appreciates that, and that I think lifts his level of play and confidence in what we have in him and what he has in himself, hopefully on a weekly basis, and continues to grow.
Noah, then Hood.
Hey, Coach. Their lead tackler, starting inside linebacker, doubtful for this upcoming game. They also have their four-star freshman edge, may not play. How does that sort of impact your perspective on that defense?
I don't think it impacts it much, just for the simple fact they rotate a lot of guys anyway. So you see a bunch of numbers in there throughout the season. So I think they've done a good job on their end as far as their rotation. There's a lot of guys that necessarily aren't, tagged as starters that have a lot of reps under their belt. So I don't think that involves, our game plan too much. They definitely, obviously had a great production, versus Notre Dame last week. So, we've got to execute at a high level for sure, no matter who's out there.
So, Glenn, this is obviously a Stanford defense that really struggled a lot against the Pac-12 teams, although I think against Oregon State, actually, they had a decent game. But they really turned it up another level against Notre Dame. And you can argue the Irish are really struggling this year. What have you seen different in that Stanford defense between the Pac-12 play and Notre Dame last week?
I don't know if anything, probably maybe just an execution piece, maybe. Notre Dame tried to push it down the field a little bit, and with not much success, and that pushed them a little bit more into the run game. They had a couple shots here or there in the run game. Notre Dame had a couple of shots, maybe a penalty here or there that kind of pushed them behind the chains, maybe a sack here or there that pushed them behind the chains and really didn't stay on schedule. So that probably, that puts you in a bad situation from a play calling standpoint. But I think just the execution, they do a lot of things as far as disguise, and they'll move the front, twist the front, and play some how they fit the run game. So that created some problems for Notre Dame this week. So all things that we have to be ready for sure.
Yeah. Coach, you mentioned they rotate a lot of guys. I mean, on the back end, they have a lot of experience, lots of seniors there in the secondary. What have you seen from them in preparation for this
Yeah,
week?
just that. I mean, obviously the production, like you said in the last game, I mean, those guys, I think they have 4 or 5 seniors back there. So a lot of experience. They've seen a lot of formations. They've seen a lot of adjustments. There's a lot of storage, built up through the years. So that production is definitely translating on the field with that years of experience. So, again, we're going to have to execute at a high level. We have a plan of attack. See if we can execute it.
You never want to have a guy get banged up, but Emory, that happening with the bye week, just your kind of thoughts about him kind of getting back into the flow of everything and how he's doing?
Yeah, I think in general, I think that, as we mentioned last week, that bye week for us really fell into a great spot, not only with Emory, but a bunch of guys that were just kind of bumps and bruises. And Sean did a great job as far as backing off of guys that have had a lot of reps throughout the season. And feel like we're as fresh as we've been in a long time, and as healthy as we've been considering in a long time, halfway through the season. So, Coach Joe down the weight room's done a great job with, with the preventative piece and trying to get the legs back for this weekend. So, I think we're in a great, as good as we can be a place moving forward off of bye week.
Sean told us this week that he likes to have a quarterback in a rhythm as opposed to like playing 2 guys. What's your kind of perspective on that, just given your coaching history?
Yeah, I've it's been a while since I've done the 2 quarterback thing. I think just I think at every position we talk about that, even at running back, right? Like if a running back's running good, he's in a rhythm, you want to keep that going too. So I think that applies at a lot of positions. So I think that's the ideal situation. Obviously, each situation's unique, but if you can get a guy in a rhythm, I think you're in a better situation for sure.
And the fact that Trenton played so well, does that make it easier to make a move with Emory if things aren't going great, as opposed to what you had been doing prior to Trenton's performance?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you have to evaluate each situation at the given time period. So I don't know if that's harder, easier. And again, I think that's at every position. If somebody's not getting it done, you have to, look at it, whatever position it may be. But there's not going to be any, quick trigger, if you will, or anything. We're going to play it out and do what we can do, try to execute, and again, whoever's out there's got to try to perform at a high level.
The Stanford defense is certainly improved by the numbers, at least, in terms of the run defense from last season. But sort of given the absences we've already talked about, I mean, how important will it be to establish your guys' strength, as it seems, with the ground game, Xavier Valladay, all that?
Yeah, I think just balance in general, I think, is a valuable piece. The last couple of weeks we've been able to create some balance statistically with not only production, yards, passing yards, rushing, but also attempts in both running attempts and passing attempts. So I think if we can keep that at a balance, I think that in itself, creates some issues. At least they have to defend on that end, right? So if we can stay ahead of the chains, that's kind of been the recipe, right? If you can kind of stay ahead of the chains, create some conversions on some third downs, get some plays on your game plan called, and keep that balance, I think that's when, you lead yourself to productive, extended drives.
How confident are you with the new offensive front going up against Stanford this weekend?
With new offensive front?
Sort of just the changes with Chris Martinez going to left guard, Des Holmes at right guard.
Yeah.
Sort of some changes.
Yeah, I think, all those guys have had games under the bat, maybe not at that position, but they have experience. So I think they'll be fine. They have a good week of practice. They work hard together. They work good together. So I think, the expectation is they'll perform well, I think.